The conference room smelled like expensive leather and my husband's cologne. I sat in the corner chair, invisible as always, while Marcus presented his latest marketing strategy to the board. 6 months of marriage, and he still hadn't learned that I preferred subtle fragrance to his aggressive woody scent that announced his presence 3 hallways away. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. And that's why Hartwell Industries needs to modernize their approach, Marcus declared, his voice carrying that confident edge he'd perfected over years of pitching to corporate clients. Their current brand identity is stuck in the 80s. Frankly, it's embarrassing. I watched the other consultants nod along, their faces arranged in expressions of professional agreement. None of them knew. Not one person in this room had any idea that the embarrassing company Marcus was critiquing belonged to my family. That Hartwell Industries had been my maiden name. That the woman he'd married 6 months ago in that beautiful ceremony in the Hamptons was Catherine Hartwell, daughter of Richard Hartwell, CEO of the very company Marcus was currently eviscerating with his PowerPoint presentation. Their executive team clearly lacks vision, Marcus continued, clicking to the next slide. A photo of my father appeared, taken at last year's industry conference. This is Richard Hartwell, the CEO, 72 years old, set in his ways, probably still using a flip phone. My father's iPhone 15 Pro was actually newer than Marcus's, but I said nothing, just crossed my legs and made a small note in my leather portfolio. Around me, the other junior consultants, my supposed peers in this charade, snickered softly. It had started as a strange experiment in humility. This double life. After graduating from Wharton with my MBA, I'd wanted to understand business from the ground up, to see how the other half lived before eventually taking my place in the family company. My father had been skeptical, but supportive. "If you want to slum it with the consultants for a while, Catherine, that's your choice," he'd said over dinner at our estate in Connecticut. "But don't expect me to bail you out when you realize how soul-crushing corporate America can be for people without a trust fund." I'd smiled at his concern. "That's exactly why I need to do this, Dad. How can I run Hartwell Industries someday if I don't understand what it's like for everyone else?" So Catherine Hartwell became Catherine Wells, a name generic enough to avoid any connection to the Hartwell dynasty. I'd rented a modest apartment in Brooklyn, started driving a 5-year-old Honda instead of my Mercedes, and applied to boutique consulting firms under my new identity. My resume was impressive, but not too impressive. Good schools, but not Wharton. Solid work experience, but nothing that screamed privilege. Whitmore Consulting had hired me 3 years ago. I'd worked my way up from analyst to senior consultant, earning every promotion through late nights and weekend work, proving to myself that I could succeed without my family name. It had been oddly liberating, this anonymity. Then I'd met Marcus at a company retreat. He'd been everything I'd thought I wanted: ambitious, charming, sharp-witted. Over s'mores by the campfire, he'd told me about growing up in a middle-class family in Ohio, working his way through state school, building his career through pure determination. I'd been captivated by his drive, his hunger for success. It felt authentic in a way that the men in my social circle never had, those trust fund babies who'd never worked for anything. We'd dated for a year before he proposed, and I'd said yes without thinking it through, without considering that Marcus had fallen in love with Catherine Wells, the struggling consultant, not Catherine Hartwell, the heiress, without realizing that I'd built our entire relationship on a foundation of omission, if not outright lies. Now, sitting in this conference room listening to him mock my father's company, I was beginning to understand the cost of my little social experiment. "The daughter is even worse," Marcus said, and my attention snapped back to the presentation. Another photo appeared on screen. Me, from some charity gala 2 years ago, wearing a Valentino gown and a practiced smile. Catherine Hartwell, 31 years old, never worked a real job in her life. Just floats from charity event to charity event, spending daddy's money. Heat crept up my neck. The irony was suffocating. Marcus didn't recognize me in that photo because he'd never seen me as anything other than Catherine Wells, the woman who wore Target clearance and took the subway to work. The woman who split dinner bills and worried about student loans she didn't actually have. She's probably never made a difficult decision in her entire life, Marcus continued, warming to his subject. These trust fund kids are all the same. No concept of what it means to actually work for something. I'd spent the last 3 years working 60-hour weeks, earning every cent of my salary at Whitmore. Before that, I'd graduated top of my class, run my college's investment club, interned at Goldman Sachs where nobody knew or cared about my last name. But sure, Marcus, I'd never worked for anything. So our recommendation, Marcus said, clicking to his conclusion slide, is that Hartwell Industries needs a complete overhaul. New branding, new leadership, new vision. Frankly, I think the whole executive team should be replaced, starting at the top. Replace my father, the man who'd built Hartwell Industries from a small manufacturing plant into a billion-dollar enterprise over 4 decades. The man who still worked 12-hour days at 72, who knew every employee by name, who'd never laid anyone off even during the 2008 recession when it would have been the smart financial move. I'd heard enough. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Interesting perspective, I said quietly, and Marcus turned to me with that indulgent smile he used when I dared to speak up in meetings, like he was proud of his little wife for trying to contribute to the grown-up conversation. Catherine has some thoughts, he announced to the room, his tone making it clear that everyone should prepare to be patient with the junior consultant. Let's hear them. I stood, smoothing my sensible J.Crew skirt. I think you're making assumptions based on incomplete data. Hartwell Industries has consistently outperformed its competitors for the past 15 years. Employee retention is 30% higher than industry average. They've won ethics awards, sustainability certifications, and maintained steady growth even during economic downturns. Maybe their branding isn't flashy, but their fundamentals are rock solid. Marcus's smile tightened. Flashy branding isn't just about aesthetics, Catherine. It's about market perception. And right now, Hartwell is perceived as a dinosaur. Perceived by whom? I asked, keeping my voice level. Their stock price is up 20% this year. Customer satisfaction surveys show a 92% approval rating. They're not struggling, Marcus. They're just not chasing trends. Well, Marcus said, his jaw tensing the way it did when I challenged him at home. I think 15 years in consulting gives me a bit more insight than your 3 years at analyst level. The room went silent. A few of the other consultants exchanged glances. Sarah Chen, who sat 2 seats down from me, raised her eyebrows slightly. We'd become friends over late-night coffee runs and commiserating about difficult clients. She was one of the few people at Whitmore I genuinely liked. You're right, I said, sitting back down. I'm sure your 15 years of experience make you the expert. I heard the sarcasm in my own voice, thin and sharp as a paper cut. Marcus heard it too. His face flushed, and I could see him calculating whether to push back or let it go in front of the team. Let's take a 15-minute break, announced Jennifer Whitmore, the firm's founder and our boss. She was in her 60s, sharp as a tack, and missed nothing. Good discussion, everyone. Marcus, excellent presentation. Catherine, I appreciate your devil's advocate position. It's important to challenge our assumptions. As the room cleared, Jennifer caught my eye and gave me a small nod. She'd been mentoring me informally over the past year, and I suspected she saw more than she let on. Jennifer had built her consulting empire from nothing, and she had a talent for reading people. Marcus waited until we were alone in the conference room before approaching me. "What was that?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "What was what?" "That challenge, in front of the whole team." He loosened his tie, a gesture I'd learned meant he was trying to contain his anger. "We're supposed to present a united front, Catherine." "I was just offering another perspective," I said, gathering my notes. "Isn't that what consultants do? Analyze from multiple angles?" "You made me look bad." "I asked questions about your assumptions. That's not the same thing." Marcus exhaled sharply. "You know what? Fine, whatever. I have a client call in 10 minutes. He started toward the door, then paused. "We're having dinner with the Hartwell team tonight. Big pitch meeting. I need you there to take notes and make sure everything's documented. Can you do that without undermining me again?" My heart stopped. "Dinner? Tonight?" "Yes, tonight. I told you about this last week. The client dinner at Oriole, 7 o'clock. He frowned. "Don't tell me you forgot." I had forgotten. Or more accurately, I'd blocked it out, the way you block out an impending root canal. I'd known this moment was coming, the moment when my two worlds would collide, but I'd been avoiding thinking about the specifics. "I'll be there," I said. "Good. Wear something nice. Not one of your usual thrift store specials. This is a major client." He checked his watch. "I really have to take this call. We'll talk later." After he left, I sat alone in the conference room, my hands shaking slightly. Tonight. I was going to have dinner with my own father and my husband, and Marcus had no idea they were about to meet his wife. I could tell him now. Should tell him now. Explain everything before tonight's dinner, before the situation became impossibly complicated. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he'd dismissed my analysis in front of the team. Maybe it was hearing him call my father a dinosaur and my life's work meaningless. Maybe it was the slowly dawning realization that the man I'd married had fallen in love with a fiction, and I wasn't sure he'd love the truth. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Looking forward to dinner tonight, darling. Your mother sends her love. We haven't seen you in 3 weeks. You're working too hard." I typed back. "Can't wait to see you both. It's going to be an interesting evening." More interesting than he knew. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of spreadsheets and client emails. I kept my head down, avoiding Marcus and the curious glances from Sarah, who'd caught me in the break room around 2 o'clock. "That was quite the moment in the conference room," she'd said, pouring coffee into her world's okayest consultant mug. "I've never seen you push back against Marcus like that." "I shouldn't have," I said, probably too quickly. He was right. I overstepped. Sarah had given me a long look. "Catherine, you're one of the smartest people here. Your analysis was solid. Don't let Marcus or anyone else make you doubt that." If only she knew. If only any of them knew. At 6 o'clock, I left the office and took a taxi to my apartment in Brooklyn. My real apartment. The one Marcus had never seen. He thought I lived in a cramped studio in Queens, and I'd maintained that fiction by keeping a small rental there that I never actually used. It was elaborate and exhausting, but necessary for maintaining the double life. My real apartment was in Brooklyn Heights, a spacious 2-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River. I'd bought it under my real name, furnished it with pieces from my actual life, the antique desk from my grandmother, the modern art I'd collected in my 20s, the first edition books I'd been accumulating since college. This was where Catherine Hartwell lived. Catherine Wells existed in a carefully constructed set of lies. I stood in front of my closet staring at the evening gowns I never got to wear anymore. Marcus had asked me to wear something nice, but not too nice. He wanted his competent assistant, not a woman who might outshine him. But tonight wasn't about Marcus. I selected a midnight blue Armani dress, elegant but not showy, paired with understated diamond earrings that had been my grandmother's. Professional enough for a business dinner, expensive enough that anyone with an eye for quality would recognize the cost. I swept my hair into a chignon, applied makeup with a practiced hand, and looked at myself in the mirror. Catherine Hartwell stared back at me. I'd almost forgotten what she looked like. Oriole was the kind of restaurant where reservations required 3 months of advance notice and a connection to someone important. The kind of place where the waiters knew which fork went with which course and could pronounce every ingredient in French. Marcus had been thrilled when he'd secured the reservation, treating it like a personal victory. He didn't know that my father was a regular, that the chef, Daniel, had attended my birthday dinner just last month. I arrived deliberately late at 7:15. Late enough that everyone would already be seated, late enough to make an entrance. The hostess recognized me immediately, her professional composure slipping for just a moment. "Ms. Hartwell," she said quietly, "your party is already seated. Should I—" "I'm actually here with the Whitmore Consulting Group," I said, equally quiet. "Please don't use my last name. Just seat me with them as Catherine Wells." Her eyebrows rose fractionally, but she was too well trained to question it. "Of course, Ms. Catherine. This way, please." As we wound through the restaurant, I could see Marcus at a table near the windows. He was in full charm mode, laughing at something, his hands gesturing animatedly. Across from him sat my father, looking distinguished in his gray suit, and my mother, elegant as always in pearls and a classic black dress. Next to them was David Reeves, Hartwell's CFO and my father's closest friend, along with Jennifer Whitmore. My mother saw me first. Her eyes widened, and I caught the slight shake of my head, the silent plea to play along. She'd always been quick, my mother. She understood immediately that something complex was happening, and her expression smoothed into polite neutrality. Then my father turned, and I watched his face go through a series of rapid changes: surprise, confusion, concern, and finally, as our eyes met, a flash of understanding. He'd taught me chess when I was 7, taught me to think several moves ahead. He was doing that now, calculating angles, seeing the game board. "Ah, there you are," Marcus said, spotting me. He stood, playing the attentive husband, but I caught the flicker of disapproval in his eyes as he took in my dress. Too nice. I'd worn something too nice. "Everyone, this is Catherine Wells, one of our senior consultants. She'll be documenting tonight's discussion." Catherine Wells, my father repeated slowly, and I could hear the careful emphasis on the false name. What an interesting name. Very sensible. My mother pressed her lips together, fighting a smile. "Mr. Hartwell," I said, extending my hand formally. "Mrs. Hartwell, it's a pleasure to meet you." My father took my hand, and for just a moment his grip tightened, a silent question. "Are you okay? Do you need me to blow this up right now?" I squeezed back. "Not yet. Let me handle this." "The pleasure is ours," he said aloud. "Any colleague of Marcus's is welcome at our table. Please sit." The hostess pulled out a chair, next to Marcus, across from my parents. Of course, the perfect position to watch this disaster unfold from every angle. "Catherine was just telling me she's never been to Oriole before," Marcus said, pouring me a glass of water with the air of someone being generous. "I figured it would be a nice experience for her." I'd celebrated my 30th birthday in this restaurant's private dining room. The chef had made a custom 7-course tasting menu. "It's lovely," I said neutrally. "So, Catherine," my mother said, her voice warm but her eyes sharp with intelligence, "how long have you been with Whitmore Consulting?" "3 years, Mrs. Hartwell." "3 years?" she repeated. "That's exactly how long since we've been working with Whitmore," my father cut in smoothly. 3 years of excellent service. Jennifer has built quite an impressive firm. Jennifer Whitmore, who'd been watching this exchange with fascination, smiled. We pride ourselves on hiring the best talent. Catherine has been exceptional, one of our rising stars. I'm sure, my mother said, taking a sip of wine. She seems like the type who's full of surprises. Marcus, oblivious to the undercurrents, launched into his pitch. Mr. Hartwell, Mrs. Hartwell, I'm excited to share our vision for Hartwell Industries. We see enormous potential for growth, but it's going to require some significant changes. Changes, my father repeated. What kind of changes? Well, to be frank, the company's image needs modernization. Your brand identity is stuck in the past. Your executive team. Marcus caught himself, remembering he was talking to the CEO. Present company accepted, of course, but some of the senior leadership might benefit from fresh perspectives. I see. My father cut a piece of his steak with surgical precision. And what about my daughter? Marcus blinked. Your daughter? Catherine Hartwell. You had quite a bit to say about her this morning in your presentation. My blood turned to ice. My father had seen the presentation. Of course he had. Jennifer must have sent it over as part of the pitch materials. Ah, well. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I may have been a bit harsh. I'm sure she's a perfectly nice person. It's just that from a business perspective, having family members in ceremonial positions can send the wrong message about meritocracy. Ceremonial positions, my father repeated softly. Interesting choice of words. What Marcus means, I interjected, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart, is that nepotism can undermine corporate culture. It's a valid concern. Marcus shot me a grateful look, not realizing I was about to detonate a bomb at this table. Although, I continued, I think it's worth noting that Catherine Hartwell holds an MBA from Wharton, graduated summa cum laude. She's been with Hartwell Industries for 2 years in various strategic roles, and by all accounts, she's earned every position she's held. How do you know all that? Marcus asked, frowning. I did my research, I said simply. I always research our clients thoroughly. It's basic due diligence. My mother was shaking with silent laughter now, hiding it behind her napkin. My father's eyes gleamed with something that might have been pride. Thorough research, Jennifer Whitmore said, joining the game with evident amusement. One of Catherine's greatest strengths. She never makes assumptions without data. Well, research is one thing, Marcus said, regaining his footing. But I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what I'm seeing. Hartwell Industries needs bold changes, and that starts with... With what? I asked. Replacing the leadership team that's grown the company by 300% over the last decade? Abandoning the ethical standards that have made Hartwell a preferred partner for Fortune 500 companies? Adopting flashy branding over substance? Marcus stared at me. Catherine, this really isn't the time. No, I think it is the time. I set down my fork, my appetite gone. I think it's exactly the time to talk about what really matters in business. Not just profit margins and brand recognition, but integrity, loyalty, and understanding what you're actually trying to improve before you tear it all down. Honey, Marcus said, and I heard the warning in his voice. The don't embarrass me tone he'd used more and more lately. But I was done being embarrassed, done being invisible, done pretending to be less than I was. Mr. Hartwell, I said, looking directly at my father, I apologize for my colleagues' assumptions. Some consultants make the mistake of thinking they understand a company after a few weeks of research. They don't realize that true understanding takes years, sometimes decades, sometimes a lifetime. My father's expression was unreadable. And you? Do you understand Hartwell Industries, Ms. Wells? I held his gaze. Better than anyone at this table realizes. The silence stretched out, broken only by the ambient noise of the restaurant, the clink of glasses, the murmur of other conversations, the soft notes of a piano somewhere in the background. Then my father smiled, slow and warm. I believe you do. Marcus looked between us, confusion written across his face. I'm not sure what's happening here. What's happening? Jennifer Whitmore said, setting down her wine glass with a decisive click. Is that we're learning an important lesson about making assumptions. Isn't that right, Catherine? That's right, I said. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Catherine, she said, using my real name deliberately, I think it's time we stopped playing games, don't you? Marcus's face went pale. Catherine? He repeated. Wait. Catherine. Wells? Catherine? Hartwell? I turned to look at my husband of 6 months, the man I'd thought I loved, the man who'd spent the day mocking my family and my work without ever realizing who I was. Surprise, I said softly. And that's when everything fell apart. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Other diners turned to look. His face cycled through shock, anger, confusion, and then settled on something I'd never seen before. Fear. You're Catherine Hartwell, he said. Not a question, an accusation. I'm Catherine Hartwell, I confirmed. I'm also Catherine Wells. I've been both for the past 3 years. You lied to me. I omitted. I corrected. There's a difference. You... He looked around the table, at my parents, at Jennifer, at David Reeves, who was watching with interest. Everyone knows? How long has everyone known? I've known from the beginning, my father said calmly. Catherine told us about her social experiment when she started at Whitmore. We thought it was foolish but harmless, though I'm beginning to wonder if it was as harmless as we thought. Social experiment, Marcus repeated. Our entire relationship was a social experiment? No, I said, and I meant it. When I met you, that was real. I fell in love with you, Marcus, with the man you were, or the man I thought you were. The man you thought I was, he echoed bitterly. And who is that exactly? The guy who's not good enough for Catherine Hartwell, heiress? The guy who needs to be tested to see if he's only after money? The guy who spent today tearing apart my family's company, I shot back. The guy who called my life's work meaningless. The guy who treats his wife like a secretary in meetings and expects her to take notes while he pitches to her own father. I didn't know. Marcus's voice rose. How was I supposed to know when you lied about everything? I didn't lie about everything, I said, my own voice rising to match his. I worked hard at Whitmore. I earned my position. Every promotion, every project, every success, that was real. The only thing I hid was my last name and my bank account. Only thing? Marcus laughed, a harsh sound. That's not a small detail, Catherine. That's a fundamental deception. Our entire marriage is built on lies. And what's it built on from your side? I demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, you married a woman you thought was beneath you, someone you could mentor and control. Someone who'd be grateful for your guidance and never question your expertise. That's not... I don't... Marcus struggled for words. I loved you. You loved Catherine Wells, I said quietly. The woman who needed you. I'm not sure you love Catherine Hartwell at all. My mother's hand tightened on mine. My father sat very still, watching Marcus with the calculating gaze of a man who'd built an empire by reading people accurately. Jennifer Whitmore cleared her throat. Perhaps we should adjourn this dinner and revisit the business discussion another time. No, my father said. I think we should finish it now. Marcus, you came here tonight to pitch us on changing Hartwell Industries. You want to replace the leadership, modernize the brand, bring in fresh perspectives. Is that correct? Marcus, looking shell-shocked, nodded. Then here's my response. No, Whitmore Consulting is fired. Effective immediately. Jennifer, I respect you and your firm, but I won't work with people who make shallow judgments based on incomplete information. Catherine was right this morning. Your fundamentals are strong when your research is thorough. But when you rely on assumptions and prejudice, he shook his head. That's when you make expensive mistakes. Mr. Hartwell, Jennifer said carefully, I understand your frustration, but perhaps we could discuss. There's nothing to discuss. Send me your final invoice for work completed. We're done. Jennifer nodded slowly. Understood. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this. And Marcus, you and I need to have a conversation tomorrow morning. My office, 8 a.m. That was the sound of a career imploding. Marcus stood frozen, watching his major client and probably his job disappear simultaneously. Then he turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Real hurt, underneath the anger. I hope it was worth it, he said quietly. Your little experiment. I hope it was worth destroying our marriage to prove… What? That people judge you for your money? Congratulations, Catherine, you were right. I'm just a guy from Ohio who wasn't good enough for you. Marcus, I started, but he was already walking away, threading through tables, heading for the exit. I moved to follow him, but my father's hand caught my arm. Let him go, sweetheart. He needs time to process. I need to explain, I said. You need to let him think, my father corrected gently. Right now, he's hurt and humiliated, and anything you say will just make it worse. Give him space. I sank back into my chair, watching Marcus's retreating figure disappear through the restaurant doors. Around us, the other diners were pretending not to stare, but I could feel their attention like heat on my skin. Well, my mother said after a long moment, that was certainly dramatic. Despite everything, I laughed, a short, sharp sound that was almost a sob. I've made a mess of this, haven't I? You have, my father agreed, but not irreparably. The question is, what do you want to do now? I looked at my parents, really looked at them. My father with his steady gaze and his patience. My mother with her sharp intelligence and her unwavering support. They'd let me play this game for 3 years, trusted me to find my own way, even when they must have worried about exactly this outcome. I don't know, I admitted. I thought I was proving something, that I could succeed without the Hartwell name, that I could find someone who loved me for myself, not my money. Instead, I just proved that deception never ends well. But you did succeed, David Reeves spoke up for the first time. Catherine, you've been working at Whitmore for 3 years, and by all accounts, you're excellent at your job. You earned that. No one can take that away from you. And as for love, my mother added softly, real love survives truth. If Marcus loves Catherine Hartwell as much as he loved Catherine Wells, he'll come around. And if he doesn't, she shrugged elegantly, then you'll know he wasn't the right man after all. Jennifer Whitmore signaled for the check. For what it's worth, Catherine, I've known about your real identity for about 6 months. I stared at her. What? I'm good at what I do. I noticed inconsistencies, did some digging, found some documents that didn't quite match your supposed background. She smiled slightly. I've been wondering when you'd come clean. I didn't expect it to be quite so… explosive. Are you going to fire me? I asked. Fire you? Why would I fire one of my best consultants? Jennifer shook her head. Though we will need to have a conversation about disclosure and potential conflicts of interest, and obviously, you can't work on Hartwell Industries accounts anymore. Obviously, I agreed weakly. But Catherine Wells earned her place at my firm. If she wants to keep working there, under her real name this time, she's welcome to stay. Jennifer stood gathering her purse. I'll let you have some family time. Catherine, take the rest of the week off. You've had quite a day. After she left, it was just the 4 of us. Me, my parents, and David. The waiter appeared with our check and more wine, sensing correctly that we'd be there a while longer. "So," David said, breaking the silence, "what now? Do you go home to your husband? Back to Brooklyn? To Connecticut?" "I don't know what home is anymore," I admitted. "I've been living in so many different versions of myself, I'm not sure which one is real." "They're all real," my father said. "That's what you don't understand yet. Catherine Hartwell and Catherine Wells. They're both you. The woman who can command a boardroom and the woman who takes the subway to work. The heiress and the consultant. You don't have to choose between them." "But Marcus does," I said. "He has to choose whether he can accept all of me. And I'm not sure he can." "Then that's his loss," my mother said firmly. "Catherine, you are brilliant and capable with or without our last name, with or without Marcus. Don't forget that." We sat there for another hour, talking through the implications. My father wanted me to come back to Hartwell Industries, take up the strategic role we'd always planned for me. David suggested I could consult independently, build my own firm. My mother just wanted me to be happy, whatever that looked like. When I finally left the restaurant, it was after 10. I stood on the sidewalk, looking at the Manhattan skyline, trying to decide where to go. To my apartment in Brooklyn Heights where Catherine Hartwell lived? To the studio in Queens where Catherine Wells pretended to struggle? To the home I shared with Marcus in his upscale apartment building, the one where I'd been playing the role of grateful wife? My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Don't come home tonight, I need space to think." So that decision was made for me. I hailed a cab and gave the driver my Brooklyn Heights address. As we drove through the city, I caught glimpses of my reflection in the window. The expensive dress, the diamond earrings, the careful makeup. Catherine Hartwell stared back at me, but I felt like Catherine Wells inside, lost and uncertain, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah from work. "OMG, just heard about the dinner from Jennifer. Are you okay? Need anything? Wine? Ice cream? Someone to key Marcus's car?" Despite everything, I smiled. Sarah didn't even know the whole story yet. Didn't know about my real identity. But she was already in my corner. I texted back. "All of the above, but mostly wine. Can you come over? Address?" I hesitated for just a moment, then sent her my real address, the Brooklyn Heights apartment that Catherine Wells had never admitted existed. "Holy shit, this is your apartment?" came the reply 30 seconds later. "What are you, secretly rich or something?" "Something like that," I typed. "Long story. Bring wine and I'll tell you everything." On my way. As the cab pulled up to my building, I looked up at the windows of my apartment, dark against the night sky. Somewhere in this city, Marcus was angry and hurt, probably drinking scotch and cursing my name. Somewhere in this city, my parents were probably discussing what came next, making plans and contingencies the way they always did. Somewhere in this city, Jennifer Whitmore was probably rethinking her entire relationship with me and with Hartwell Industries. But here, in this moment, I was just Catherine. Not Hartwell, not Wells, just Catherine, standing at the crossroads of her own deception, trying to figure out how to move forward when she'd built her life on half-truths and hidden identities. The doorman greeted me by name, my real name, and I realized how much I'd missed being seen, really seen, as myself. "Good evening, Ms. Hartwell. Package arrived for you this afternoon." "Thank you, Daniel." I rode the elevator to my floor, letting myself into the apartment that felt both familiar and foreign after months of pretending it didn't exist. The city lights sparkled through my windows, and I kicked off my heels, letting them fall wherever they landed. Tomorrow I'd figure out how to put the pieces back together. Tomorrow I'd deal with Marcus, with work, with my family, with all the consequences of my choices. Tonight, I was just going to drink wine with my friend and tell the truth for the first time in 3 years. My phone buzzed one more time. Marcus again. Why did you do it, Catherine? Why did you lie to me? I looked at the message for a long time before typing my response. Because I wanted to know if you'd love me without my name. Turns out I should have asked if you'd love me with it. His reply came fast. That's not fair. No, I agreed. None of this is fair, but it is honest. Finally. The doorbell rang. Sarah, impossibly fast, probably having taken a cab herself. I let her in, and she stood in my foyer staring at the original Rothko on the wall, the marble floors, the sweeping views of Manhattan. Okay, she said finally. I'm going to need a lot more than wine to process this. Please tell me you have top-shelf liquor somewhere in this palace. I have a fully stocked bar and about 6 hours of explanation, I said. Come on, let me tell you about the time I decided to pretend to be poor and ended up marrying a man who hates rich people. Oh my God, Sarah said, following me into the living room. This is going to be the best worst story I've ever heard. She was right. It was. Sarah stayed until 3 in the morning, working through 2 bottles of wine and the entire sordid tale of my double life. By the time she left, she'd cycled through disbelief, outrage on my behalf, and finally a kind of exhausted fascination. You're either the bravest person I know or the most self-destructive, she'd said at the door. I haven't decided which yet. Can it be both? I'd asked. Now, alone in my apartment as dawn broke over the East River, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the look on Marcus's face when he'd realized who I was. The betrayal, the humiliation, the anger. I'd done that to him. Whatever his flaws, whatever harsh words he'd spoken about my family, I'd set him up for that fall. My phone had been buzzing all night with messages. Most I'd ignored, but I scrolled through them now in the gray morning light. From my mother, "Get some rest, darling. Tomorrow is a new day." From my father, "Proud of you for finally standing up for yourself. Come by the office Monday. We should talk about your future." From David Reeves, "That took guts, kid. Your dad was right to let you figure this out on your own, but I'm glad it's over." And from Marcus, sent at 2:47 a.m. "I've been thinking all night. We need to talk. Really talk. Can you come to the apartment tomorrow afternoon? I'll be calmer then. I promise." I stared at that last message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him stew in his anger while I figured out my own feelings. But that was the coward's way out, and I'd been a coward long enough. I texted back, "I'll be there at 2. I spent Saturday morning in a kind of suspended animation, moving through my apartment like a ghost. I showered, made coffee, tried to read the news but couldn't focus. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching my life from outside my body. At noon, my phone rang. Jennifer Whitmore. "I hope I'm not calling too early," she said, though her tone suggested she didn't really care if she was. "It's fine. I've been up since dawn. I wanted to follow up on last night before the weekend disappears. Catherine, and I'm going to call you Catherine Hartwell now because that's who you are. We need to discuss your position at Whitmore." My stomach dropped. "You're firing me." "I'm not firing you," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "But we do need to restructure your role. You can't continue as a senior consultant, not after this. It's a conflict of interest, and frankly, it undermines the team dynamic." "I understand," I said quietly. "However," Jennifer continued, "I'd like to offer you a partnership position. You'd work on strategy and business development, focusing on bringing in new clients and mentoring junior consultants. No more pretending to be entry-level, no more hiding in the shadows. Just you, using your actual expertise and connections." I sat down heavily on my couch. A partnership? You earned it, Catherine. Not because of your name, though that certainly doesn't hurt for bringing in clients, but because in 3 years, you've shown more business acumen and strategic thinking than consultants with twice your experience. I'd be a fool to let you go. What about Marcus? There was a long pause. Marcus is a more complicated situation. He's a good consultant, but his judgment has been called into question. The Hartwell presentation showed poor research and unfounded assumptions, and his personal relationship with you creates obvious complications. You can't fire him because of me, I said quickly. That's not fair. I'm not firing him because of you. I'm considering firing him because he lost us a major client through sloppy work. Jennifer's voice was firm. But that's my decision to make, not yours. You need to worry about yourself right now. Think about my offer. We can discuss details next week. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone. A partnership at Whitmore. Using my real name, my real identity. No more hiding, no more pretending. It should have felt like liberation. Instead, it felt like the end of something I wasn't quite ready to let go. At 2 o'clock, I stood outside the apartment Marcus and I had shared for the past 6 months. Our apartment, though he'd insisted on keeping it in his name because it was important for him to feel like a provider. I'd gone along with it, playing the role of grateful wife, even though I could have bought the entire building without thinking twice. I knocked rather than using my key. It felt appropriate somehow, like I was a guest now, rather than a resident. Marcus answered immediately as if he'd been waiting by the door. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes bloodshot, still wearing the same clothes from last night minus the jacket and tie. "Come in," he said, stepping back. The apartment was a mess. Empty scotch bottles on the coffee table, his laptop open with what looked like job listings on the screen, papers scattered everywhere. He'd been doing exactly what I'd been doing, spinning in circles, trying to figure out what came next. "Want some coffee?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Sure." We moved to the kitchen, maintaining a careful distance from each other. Marcus made coffee with methodical precision, a task he could control when everything else was chaos. I watched him, remembering all the mornings we'd done this together, comfortable in our routine, in our shared fiction. "I owe you an apology," I said finally. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "You do?" "For not telling you sooner. For letting you walk into that dinner blind. For—" I struggled for the right words. "For building our relationship on a lie of omission." Marcus poured the coffee, handed me a mug, and leaned against the counter. "And I owe you an apology for how I talked about your family, about you, even though I didn't know it was you. That presentation was—" He shook his head. "I was trying to impress the team, trying to sound confident and decisive. I made assumptions without proper research. That's not who I want to be as a consultant or as a person." "Why did you do it?" I asked. "The presentation, I mean. You barely knew anything about Hartwell Industries." "Because I wanted to close a big client and I thought I knew better." He looked down at his coffee. "I've been thinking about what you said last night. About me wanting someone I could mentor and control. You were right." I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. When I met you, Catherine Wells, the struggling consultant, I liked that you looked up to me, that you asked for my advice, that you seemed impressed by my career. It made me feel important." He laughed bitterly. "God, that sounds pathetic now." "It's not pathetic," I said softly. "Everyone wants to feel valued." "But I wasn't valuing you, was I? I was valuing how you made me feel about myself." Marcus met my eyes. "Last night, when your dad fired us and Jennifer called me to her office, all I could think about was my career, my reputation. It took me until about 4 in the morning to realize I should have been thinking about you, about us. There might not be an us anymore, I said, and saying it out loud made my chest ache. I know. And maybe that's what I deserve. He set down his mug. But I need to understand something first. When you met me, when you fell in love with me, was any of it real? Or was I just part of your social experiment? I'd known this question was coming, and I'd been dreading it because the answer was complicated. When I started at Whitmore as Catherine Wells, it was about proving myself, I said slowly. About understanding what life was like without my family name and money smoothing the way. It was selfish, maybe even arrogant, but it was never about deceiving people I cared about. But you did deceive me. I did, I admitted. And I kept deceiving you even after we fell in love, because I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd only see Catherine Hartwell, the heiress, that you'd treat me differently, or worse, that you'd only want me for my money. Like your previous boyfriends, Marcus said quietly. I looked at him in surprise. How did you— You mentioned it once, early on, that you'd been in relationships with men who used you. I just didn't connect the dots about why you might be so careful about revealing your real identity. So you understand why I did it? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I understand the impulse. I don't understand why you kept it up after we got married. Catherine, I stood in front of our friends and family and promised to love you for better or worse. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth even then? Those friends and family were all from my Catherine Wells life, I pointed out. People I'd met at Whitmore, colleagues, a few college friends who thought I was struggling to make ends meet. I couldn't tell you without exposing the lie to everyone. So you just kept lying? Yes, I said. I kept lying, and I was wrong. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. I've been trying to figure out if I'm more hurt by the deception or more embarrassed by how I acted, what I said about your family, about you. If I'd known— But that's the point, I interrupted. You didn't know, and you still said those things. You still made assumptions about people you'd never met, about a company you barely researched. That's not about me lying, Marcus. That's about who you are as a consultant and as a person. He flinched. That's harsh. It's true. And here's the other truth. I don't know if you ever loved me. Catherine Hartwell, I mean. Because you spent yesterday tearing her apart without a second thought. I didn't know her, Marcus protested. Exactly. You didn't know her, but you judged her anyway. You decided she was worthless, spoiled, useless, all based on the fact that she was born into money. How is that different from the men who only wanted me for my wealth? They judged me based on my bank account, too. You all did. You just came to opposite conclusions. The silence that followed was heavy with realizations neither of us wanted to face. So what now? Marcus asked finally. Do we try to fix this? Can we fix this? I looked around the apartment, at all the evidence of our shared life. The photo from our wedding on the mantel. A small ceremony with Catherine Wells's modest guest list. The furniture we'd picked out together. Chosen to fit Marcus's budget, not mine. The life we'd built on a foundation of half-truths and hidden identities. I don't know if there's anything to fix, I said honestly. I think maybe we both fell in love with people who don't really exist. You loved Catherine Wells, the woman who needed you. I loved the Marcus who seemed different from everyone else in my world. But Catherine Wells isn't real. And the Marcus I thought you were— I trailed off. Isn't who I actually am, he finished. I'm just a guy who likes feeling important and sometimes makes snap judgments to impress people. And I'm a woman with trust issues who handles them by lying to everyone around her, I added. We're quite a pair. Despite everything, Marcus smiled slightly. We really are a mess, aren't we? A complete disaster, I agreed. He moved closer, and for a moment I thought he might try to kiss me, to fall back on physical intimacy as a bandage for deeper wounds. But instead, he just took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm the way he used to when we watched TV together. I want to try, he said, to fix this, to get to know the real Catherine Hartwell and to be better than I was yesterday. But I think we both know that's not going to happen living like this, pretending everything's fine. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we separate for a while, that you go back to being Catherine Hartwell, whatever that means for you. And I'll figure out who Marcus is without defining myself through my relationship to you. He squeezed my hand. And if, in 6 months or a year, we still want to try, maybe we can start over. Do it right this time. It was the most mature thing I'd heard him say since this whole situation began. It was also the most heartbreaking. I think that's probably wise, I managed to say. Jennifer's going to fire me, Marcus said matter-of-factly. I know she said she was considering it, but we both know what considering means. I lost a major client through poor work. That's not something a firm like Whitmore overlooks. She offered me a partnership, I blurted out. This morning. Marcus's hand tightened on mine for just a moment, then relaxed. Of course she did. You're brilliant, Catherine. You always have been. I'm sorry it took me so long to really see that. I haven't accepted yet. Why not? Because it feels like I'm profiting from your downfall. Because everyone at Whitmore will know what happened, and they'll all be wondering if I manipulated the situation somehow. Did you? Marcus asked. Manipulated, I mean. I thought about it honestly. Not consciously, but I could have told you the truth before that dinner. I could have prevented all of this. Instead, I let you walk into an ambush. An ambush you didn't know your father would spring, Marcus pointed out. You thought you'd just sit there taking notes while I pitched to your parents. You didn't expect him to out you in front of everyone. No, I admitted. But I also didn't stop it when I could have. Part of me wanted to see what would happen. Wanted to see if you'd recognize me, or if you'd keep treating me like invisible Catherine Wells even when I was right there. And I failed that test spectacularly, Marcus said. It wasn't a test. Or at least it wasn't supposed to be. I pulled my hand away, needing the distance. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe our whole relationship has been a test, and we've both been failing in different ways. Marcus nodded slowly. So we're really doing this. Separating. I think we have to. What about the divorce? The word hung in the air like a bomb. Divorce. We'd been married for 6 months. Together for a year and a half before that. And now we were talking about divorce. Let's not make any permanent decisions right now, I said. Let's just separate. Figure out who we are individually. And then, in a few months, we can decide about the rest. That's fair. Marcus moved toward the bedroom, then paused. For what it's worth, Catherine Hartwell, I think I could have loved you. If I'd known you from the beginning. If we'd met honestly, I think I could have loved you too, I said. The real you, underneath all the posturing and insecurity. Maybe in another life, he said softly. Maybe, I agreed. I packed my things quickly, the few items of Catherine Wells's wardrobe that I'd kept here, some toiletries, a book I'd been reading. It didn't take long. Most of my real life had always been elsewhere. In the Brooklyn Heights apartment Marcus had never seen. As I was leaving, Marcus stopped me at the door. Your dad's company, Hartwell Industries. Tell him I'm sorry about the presentation. Tell him he built something remarkable and I was too arrogant to see it. Tell him yourself, I said. Write him a letter. A real one, not a consultant's apology. He might appreciate that. Will you be going to work there? At Hartwell? I don't know yet. Maybe. Or maybe I'll stay at Whitmore, try to earn that partnership legitimately, or maybe I'll do something completely different. I shifted my bag on my shoulder. For 3 years, I've been living someone else's life. I think it's time I figured out what I actually want. When you figure it out, Marcus said, I hope it makes you happy. You too. I walked out of the apartment, down the elevator and out onto the street. It was a beautiful October afternoon, the kind of day that made New York feel magical despite all its chaos. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the city air, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. How did it go? It went, I typed back. We're separating. I'm officially homeless and unemployed. You're a literal millionaire with a partnership offer. Drama queen. I smiled. Fair point. Want to grab dinner? Can't. But tomorrow? Brunch? I want to hear everything. It's a date. I hailed a cab and gave the driver my Brooklyn address. As we drove through the city, I caught glimpses of all the different lives happening around me. Couples arguing on street corners, business people rushing to meetings, tourists taking photos, delivery drivers navigating traffic. Everyone with their own story, their own complications, their own truths and lies. My phone rang. My father. How are you, sweetheart? He asked without preamble. I'm okay. Surprisingly okay, actually. Your mother was worried. She wanted me to call, make sure you weren't doing anything dramatic. Like what? Joining a convent? He laughed. Knowing you. Probably something involving a radical career change and a move to Iceland. Iceland's not a bad idea, I mused. I hear the northern lights are beautiful this time of year. Catherine. I'm kidding, Dad. Mostly. I watched the city roll past. Marcus and I are separating. Not divorcing yet, but taking some time apart. I'm sorry to hear that. Despite everything, I know you cared about him. I did. I do. But caring isn't enough when the foundation is broken. No, he agreed. It's not. So what's next for you? Jennifer offered me a partnership at Whitmore. And? And I'm thinking about it. But I'm also thinking about your offer. Coming to Hartwell, taking on a strategic role. I paused. Or maybe starting my own consulting firm, using everything I've learned over the past 3 years to build something that's entirely mine. All good options, my father said. But Catherine, can I give you some advice? Always. Stop trying to prove yourself. You've already proven you're capable, intelligent, and driven. You've proven you can succeed with or without the Hartwell name. Now it's time to just be. Do what makes you happy, not what you think you need to prove. His words hit harder than I expected. He was right. Everything I'd done over the past 3 years had been about proving something to myself, to potential partners, to the world. I'd been so focused on the test that I'd forgotten to actually live. When did you get so wise? I asked, my voice a little unsteady. Around the time I had a daughter who thought pretending to be poor was a good use of her Wharton MBA, he said dryly. Parenthood teaches you all sorts of things. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. Come by the house tomorrow. Your mother wants to fuss over you, and I won't deny her that. Tomorrow, I promised. I'll be there. After we hung up, I leaned back in the cab seat, letting the exhaustion of the past 24 hours finally catch up with me. Tomorrow, I'd figure out my career. Tomorrow, I'd deal with Whitmore and Jennifer's offer. Tomorrow, I'd start building whatever came next. Today, I was just going to go home, my real home, and be myself. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of Hartwell Industries, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. It was May now, spring in full bloom, and I'd been working at my father's company for 4 months. Not as Catherine Hartwell, heiress and heir apparent, but as Catherine Hartwell, Director of Strategic Innovation. A position I'd earned by presenting a comprehensive plan for expanding Hartwell's sustainable manufacturing initiatives. My father had made me interview for it, made me compete against external candidates, made me prove I deserved the role. It had been humbling and exhilarating in equal measure. I'd turned down Jennifer's partnership offer at Whitmore, but we'd stayed in touch. She occasionally sent me consulting opportunities that were good fits, and I'd referred several clients to her firm. It was a mutually beneficial relationship built on respect, rather than deception. Marcus and I had signed divorce papers 3 weeks ago. It had been amicable, almost friendly. He'd found a position at a smaller consulting firm, one where he could rebuild his reputation without the shadow of the Hartwell disaster. We'd met for coffee once, both of us lighter somehow, both of us moving forward. "You seem happy?" he'd said over lattes in a cafe neither of us had ever been to together. "I am," I'd realized with some surprise. "I really am." "Good. You deserve that. So do you, Marcus." We'd parted as friends, or at least as two people who'd once meant something to each other and now wished each other well. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was honest, and after everything, honesty felt like enough. Now, standing in my office, mine, with my name on the door in simple letters, Catherine Hartwell, I felt a contentment I'd been chasing for years. My father worked 3 floors up. David Reeves had become a genuine mentor, and I was building something real, something that mattered, using both the Hartwell name and everything I'd learned as Catherine Wells. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah, who'd become one of my closest friends. "Drinks after work? I want to hear about the Singapore project." "Absolutely. 6 p.m.? Perfect. And Catherine, I'm proud of you. Just in case no one's told you that today." I smiled, typing back a simple, "Thank you." There was a knock on my door. My father poked his head in, looking every bit the distinguished CEO, despite being close to 73 now. "Got a minute?" he asked. "For you?" "Always." He came in, settled into the chair across from my desk. "I've been thinking about succession planning." My heart skipped. "Dad, I'm not dying," he said with a laugh, "but I am getting older and it's time to think about the future. Your mother and I want to travel more. Maybe spend a few years just enjoying life without board meetings and quarterly earnings calls." "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "I'm thinking of announcing my retirement in 2 years, which means we need to start preparing for the transition." He met my eyes. "I'd like you to be my successor, Catherine. Not because you're my daughter, but because you've proven yourself capable. You understand this company from the ground up now, in a way you never would have if you hadn't taken that detour through consulting. The board? We'll vote on it, of course, but I think they'll see what I see. A leader who's worked for what she has, who understands both strategy and execution, who has the vision to take Hartwell Industries into the next generation." I looked at my father, at the man who'd let me make my own mistakes and find my own way, even when it must have worried him, who'd trusted me enough to let me pretend to be someone else for 3 years, knowing I needed to figure out who I really was. "I'd be honored," I said, terrified but honored. "Good. Terror keeps you sharp." He stood straightening his tie. "Now, I have a board meeting in 10 minutes, but your mother wanted me to remind you that we're having dinner on Sunday. She's making your favorite. I'll be there." After he left, I sat alone in my office processing what had just happened. In 2 years, I'd be CEO of Hartwell Industries, not because of my last name, though that was part of it. Not because I'd earned it through years of pretending to be someone else, but because I'd finally figured out how to be myself, all of myself, without apology or disguise. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Catherine Hartwell?" an unfamiliar voice asked. "Speaking." "This is Rachel Morrison from Forbes. I'm working on a feature about next-generation leaders in manufacturing, and your name came up. Would you be interested in an interview? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. A year ago, I would have panicked, would have worried about the attention, about people discovering my past deception. But that woman, Catherine Wells, who lived in fear of being found out, didn't exist anymore. I'd be happy to, I said. When did you want to schedule it? As we arranged the details, I caught my reflection in the window. Professional, confident, comfortable in my own skin. Catherine Hartwell, not Catherine Wells. Not an heiress playing pretend. Not a consultant hiding her identity. Just Catherine, finally whole. It turned out that the person I'd been searching for all along wasn't someone I needed to become. She'd been there the entire time, waiting for me to stop performing and start living. And now, finally, I was ready. That evening, I met Sarah at our favorite wine bar in the West Village. She was already there, 2 glasses of Pinot Noir waiting. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To honest ones, I added. We drank, and then Sarah grinned. So I have news? I'm leaving Whitmore? What? Why? Because a very wise person once told me that we should do what makes us happy, not what we think we need to prove. And consultancy doesn't make me happy anymore. She leaned forward. I'm starting a nonprofit, teaching business skills to women entrepreneurs in underserved communities. Sarah, that's amazing. I know, right? And I was thinking, Hartwell Industries has a corporate giving program. Maybe we could partner on something? I laughed, feeling the pieces click into place. I think we definitely could. Let's set up a meeting. We spent the next hour talking about her plans, my Forbes interview, the future we were both building. At some point, Sarah raised her glass again. You know what I've learned from watching you this past year? She said. What? That the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending to be anything other than exactly who you are. I clinked my glass against hers. I'll drink to that. And as the evening wore on, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the warmth of real friendship, I realized something profound. I'd spent 3 years trying to prove I could succeed without my identity, only to discover that my identity, all of it, the privilege and the work ethic, the mistakes and the growth, was exactly what made me who I was meant to be. Not Catherine Wells. Not just Catherine Hartwell. Just Catherine. Finally, completely, honestly myself. And that was more than enough. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.